Captain Sarah Chun gripped the armrests of her command chair as the Defiance shuddered under another plasma barrage. The bridge lights flickered, casting dancing shadows across her weathered face. Through the reinforced viewport, she could see the massive alien fleet surrounding her single vessel like hungry predators circling wounded prey. "Hull integrity at 60%, Captain," reported Lieutenant Morrison from the engineering station, his voice tight, with barely controlled panic. "Shields are completely down. We can't take much more of this." Sarah's jaw tightened as she studied the tactical display. 300 ships of the Zephyrian hegemony formed a perfect sphere around the Defiance. Each vessel was twice the size of her heavy cruiser, their sleek black hulls gleaming with the cold light of distant stars. They had been toying with her for the past hour, delivering measured strikes designed to cripple rather than destroy. "Why haven't they finished us yet?" whispered Communications Officer Park, her hands trembling as she maintained their distress beacon. "They could have vaporized us 10 times over by now." The answer came through the static-filled comm channel in the form of a low, rumbling voice that seemed to vibrate through the ship's hull itself. The universal translator struggled to process the alien dialect, but the message was crystal clear. "Human vessel, this is Fleet Admiral Zektar of the Hegemony 3rd Battle Fleet. You have violated sacred Zephyrian space and defiled the tomb worlds of our ancestors. For this transgression, you will suffer as no species has suffered before. We will strip your ship piece by piece, broadcast your screams across the galaxy, and use your remains as a warning to all who dare challenge Zephyrian supremacy." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, remembering how this nightmare had begun. The Defiance had been on a routine survey mission in the Outer Rim when they detected unusual energy signatures from an unmapped system. Following standard exploration protocols, they had jumped in to investigate what appeared to be ancient ruins on several dead worlds. They had no way of knowing these were Zephyrian burial sites, no way of knowing that simply being present in the system constituted an unforgivable sin in hegemony culture. The first warning shots had come without any attempt at communication. The massive fleet had materialized from hyperspace like something out of humanity's worst nightmares, their weapons already charging as they assumed attack formation. Sarah had tried everything: surrender, explanation, even offering to leave immediately. But the Zephyrians were beyond reason. In their eyes, the humans had committed an act so vile that only the most excruciating death could provide adequate retribution. "Captain, I'm reading massive power spikes across their formation," called out Tactical Officer Williams. "They're preparing for something big." Sarah opened her eyes and keyed the ship-wide intercom. Her voice echoed through every corridor, every compartment where her 120 crew members waited for death. "All hands, this is the captain. I won't lie to you about our situation. We're outgunned, outnumbered, and cut off from any hope of rescue. But we are human, and humans don't go quietly into the dark. Whatever they do to us, remember that we represent the best of our species. We came here in peace, seeking knowledge and understanding. If we must die today, we die with honor." The ship lurched violently as the Zephyrians began their final assault. But instead of the overwhelming barrage Sarah expected, the attacks came in carefully measured waves. The aliens were surgically dismantling her ship, targeting non-essential systems first to ensure maximum suffering for the crew. It was a level of calculated cruelty that made her stomach turn. "They're jamming our hyperspace drive," Morrison reported, sweat beading on his forehead. "Even if we could run, we're trapped here." "Emergency beacon is still transmitting," Park added. "But at this distance from human space, it would take weeks for anyone to receive it." Sarah nodded grimly. The Zephyrians had chosen their execution site well. This remote system lay far beyond the established trade routes, in a region of space where no human ship was likely to venture for years, perhaps decades. By the time anyone discovered what had happened here, it would be nothing but a debris field and fading energy signatures. The Defiance groaned and twisted as another section of her hull was peeled away by precise energy beams. Through the gaps in her armor, atmosphere vented into space in glittering streams of frozen crystals. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout the ship, sealing off the compromised sections, but Sarah knew it was only delaying the inevitable. "Sir, I'm detecting something strange," Williams said, his voice puzzled as he studied his instruments. "The Zephyrian flagship is moving into a new position. They're aligning their main weapon directly at our bridge." Sarah felt a cold chill run down her spine. She had heard stories about Zephyrian execution rituals, whispered tales from the few survivors of their campaigns against other species. They always saved the command crew for last, preferring to kill them slowly while forcing them to watch their subordinates die first. All senior staff to the bridge, she ordered. If we're going to face the end, we face it together. Within minutes, her department heads had assembled on the command deck. These were good people, some of the finest officers humanity had ever produced. Chief Engineer Kowalski, a gruff veteran who could make miracles happen with spare parts and determination. Dr. Reynolds, whose steady hands had saved countless lives during their 3-year mission. Navigator Singh, whose brilliant mind could chart courses through the most dangerous regions of space. They stood at their posts with quiet dignity, ready to meet whatever fate awaited them. The Zephyrian formation began to shift, the massive vessels moving with predatory grace as they prepared for their grisly work. Each ship was a masterpiece of military engineering, bristling with weapons that could crack planets and armor thick enough to shrug off nuclear strikes. Against such overwhelming force, the Defiance was little more than a fragile shell of metal and ceramic, her crew nothing but insects waiting to be crushed. "Captain," Park said quietly, "I'm receiving another transmission from their flagship. Put it through." Admiral Zektar's voice filled the bridge once more, dripping with malicious satisfaction. "Human Captain, you will now witness the price of your blasphemy. We will begin with your engine room. Your engineers will burn alive in their own machinery. Then, we will move to your medical bay, where your healers will discover that their knowledge cannot save them from Zephyrian justice. Deck by deck, compartment by compartment, we will harvest your screams until only you remain. And when you beg for the mercy of death, we will deny it to you." The first surgical strike hit the engineering section with devastating precision. The deck plates beneath Sarah's feet vibrated with the impact, and she could hear the distant roar of atmosphere being sucked into space. Emergency lights flickered on throughout the ship as primary power failed, casting everything in an eerie red glow. "Kowalski," she called out to her chief engineer. "I'm here, Captain," came the reply through the intercom, though his voice was strained and punctuated by the sound of falling debris. "We've lost the main reactor, but I've got auxiliary power holding steady. We're not dead yet." Sarah allowed herself a small smile at the man's unshakable determination. Even facing certain death, he was focused on keeping her ship running for as long as possible. It was that kind of spirit that had carried humanity to the stars, and it was that same spirit that would see them through their final moments with dignity intact. The Zephyrian bombardment continued with methodical precision. Life support failed in the cargo bays, then the crew quarters, then the recreation areas. Each strike was calculated to cause maximum terror while keeping the bridge crew alive to witness the systematic destruction of their ship and the death of their comrades. "Captain," Dr. Reynolds' voice crackled through the comm. "They've breached the medical bay. We're evacuating wounded to emergency shelter, but..." The transmission ended in a burst of static. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling each death like a physical blow. These people had trusted her to bring them safely through the dangers of deep space exploration. They had followed her orders without question, believed in her judgment even when it led them into this nightmare. Now they were dying because she had made the innocent mistake of entering the wrong star system. "Ma'am," Williams said quietly, "long-range sensors are detecting something at the edge of the system. It's another ship." Sarah's eyes snapped open, hope flaring in her chest before being immediately crushed by reality. "One of ours." Williams checked his readings twice before responding. "Negative, Captain. The energy signature doesn't match any known human vessel. It's unlike anything in our database." Through the viewport, Sarah could see the Zephyrian fleet beginning to react to the newcomer. Their precise formation wavered slightly as individual ships turned sensors toward the edge of the system. For the first time since this ordeal began, she sensed uncertainty in their movements. Admiral Zektar's voice returned to the communication channel, but now it carried a note of puzzled irritation. "Unknown vessel, you are entering a hegemony execution zone. Identify yourself immediately or be destroyed alongside these human criminals." The response that came back made Sarah's blood freeze in her veins. It wasn't words. It was a sound like the screaming of tortured metal mixed with the howl of solar winds. The universal translator couldn't process it, but somehow she understood its meaning with perfect clarity. It was a challenge, a declaration of war issued by something that considered the entire Zephyrian fleet to be nothing more than an annoyance to be swept aside. "Captain," Williams whispered, his face pale as he stared at his sensor readings. That ship just accelerated to point 0.7 light speed. In normal space, that's impossible. The Zephyrian fleet was no longer focused on their systematic dismantling of the Defiants. Every weapon in their arsenal had turned toward the approaching vessel, charging to full power as 300 of the galaxy's most advanced warships prepared to face a single unknown attacker. The space around their formation began to glow with the buildup of exotic energies as they prepared to unleash enough firepower to shatter moons. Sarah found herself holding her breath, transfixed by the impossible scene unfolding before her. In all her years of service, through all the wonders and terrors she had encountered in the vast darkness between stars, she had never witnessed anything like this. A lone vessel, barely the size of a Zephyrian destroyer, racing towards certain destruction against odds that would have daunted entire fleets. The mystery ship entered weapons range, and the hegemony fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons that could melt mountains, particle beams that could crack asteroids, exotic weapons that twisted space-time itself. All of it focused on a single target that should have been vaporized instantly. Instead, the impossible happened. The lone vessel flickered, existing in several different positions simultaneously, as if reality itself couldn't decide where it was supposed to be. The massive barrage passed harmlessly through empty space, striking nothing but vacuum while their target continued its relentless approach. By all the gods, Williams breathed. What kind of technology is that? Before anyone could answer, the mystery ship opened fire. What emerged from its weapons wasn't energy or projectiles. It was something far more terrifying. Space itself began to unravel around the lead Zephyrian vessels, their hulls simply ceasing to exist as fundamental forces stopped working in their vicinity. 12 ships, each one a triumph of hegemony engineering, were reduced to their component atoms in less than 3 seconds. Admiral Zektar's voice returned to the communication channel, but now it was filled with naked terror. All vessels, concentrate fire. Bring every weapon to bear. Kill that thing before. His transmission ended in a burst of static as his flagship suffered the same fate as the other vessels, its massive bulk dissolving into cosmic dust as if it had never existed. The remaining ships of the hegemony fleet broke formation, their disciplined ranks crumbling as individual captains made the desperate decision to flee. They never had a chance. The mystery vessel moved through space like a shark through blood-filled water, its reality-warping weapons reaching out to touch each fleeing ship with the finality of death itself. One by one, the pride of the Zephyrian hegemony simply stopped existing, their crews dying so quickly they never had time to scream. Sarah watched the slaughter with a mixture of awe and horror, unable to comprehend what she was witnessing. In less than 5 minutes, an entire battle fleet had been wiped from existence by a single vessel whose capabilities seemed to mock the very laws of physics. When the last Zephyrian ship had been reduced to scattered atoms, the mystery vessel turned its attention to the crippled Defiants. Sarah tensed, expecting to share the same fate as their former tormentors, but instead of weapons fire, they received a communication signal. The voice that emerged from the speakers was unmistakably human, though it carried undertones of something vast and terrible. This is the Nemesis. Are there survivors aboard the human vessel? Sarah's hands shook as she activated the response channel. This is Captain Sarah Chun of the exploration ship Defiance. We have 108 survivors. What are you? A long pause followed before the answer came, and when it did, Sarah felt her worldview shift fundamentally. We are the last crew of the Earth Defense Force vessel Nemesis, Captain Chun. We have been searching for you for a very long time. The implications of those words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Earth Defense Force vessels had been decommissioned over 2 centuries ago, replaced by the modern Stellar Navy. No ship bearing that designation should still exist, let alone possess technology that could casually destroy entire fleets. That's impossible, she whispered. The EDF was disbanded in 2387. How are you still? Time works differently when you're fighting humanity's war, Captain. We'll explain everything once we get your people to safety. Prepare for emergency transport. We're bringing you home. As mysterious energy fields began to envelope the Defiance, Sarah realized that her ordeal was far from over. She had survived the Zephyrian execution fleet, but now she faced an even greater mystery. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, humanity's defenders were still fighting battles she couldn't imagine, wielding weapons that defied comprehension. And somehow, impossibly, they had come to save her. Captain Sarah Chun materialized on the transport pad of the Nemesis, and immediately knew she was somewhere that shouldn't exist. The chamber around her was wrong in ways that made her mind struggle to process what she was seeing. The walls curved impossibly, seeming to extend infinitely while somehow containing a finite space. Lights that weren't quite lights illuminated surfaces that appeared to be made of crystallized starlight. "Welcome aboard the Nemesis, Captain Chun." Sarah turned toward the voice and found herself face to face with a man who looked perhaps 30 years old, though his eyes held depths that suggested centuries of experience. He wore a uniform she recognized from history books, the deep blue of the old Earth Defense Force, but the fabric seemed to shift and flow like liquid shadow. "I'm Commander Marcus Webb," he said, extending a hand that felt reassuringly human despite everything else about this place. "I apologize for the unconventional circumstances of our meeting." "Commander Webb," Sarah managed, finding her voice after several seconds of stunned silence. "Your ship, what you did to that Zephyrian fleet, that should have been impossible." Marcus smiled, though there was sadness in the expression. "Many things become possible when you're fighting for the survival of your species, Captain. Please, follow me. The Admiral wants to meet you, and your crew is being treated in our medical bay." As they walked through corridors that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions, Sarah's mind raced with questions. The Nemesis was impossibly large, its interior spaces defying the external dimensions she had glimpsed during transport. Crew members they passed looked human enough, but there was something different about them, a quality of awareness, as if they existed slightly outside normal space-time. "How many of you are there?" Sarah asked as they entered what appeared to be a lift, though it moved in directions that had no names. "Originally, the Nemesis had a crew of 800, Marcus replied. "Now it's complicated. We've been fighting this war for over 300 years, Captain. Time becomes fluid when you're operating in the deep dark between realities." The lift opened onto what Marcus called the command center, though it bore no resemblance to any bridge Sarah had ever seen. Instead of a traditional layout, the space was a sphere filled with floating holographic displays that showed star charts spanning the entire galaxy. At the center sat a figure that made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. Admiral Elena Vasquez looked exactly as she appeared in the historical records, a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen humanity's first steps into deep space. But, according to those same records, she had died over 200 years ago when the Nemesis disappeared during humanity's first encounter with hostile alien forces. "Captain Chun," the Admiral said, rising from her command chair with fluid grace. "I've been following your mission with great interest. Your discovery of the Zephyrian burial worlds was unfortunate, but not unexpected." "Admiral Vasquez," Sarah stammered, "you're supposed to be dead." The historical records state that the Nemesis was destroyed in 2387 during the First Contact War with the Hegemony. Elena smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. "The historical records say a great many things, Captain. Most of them are true, from a certain point of view. The Nemesis was indeed lost during our first encounter with the Zephyrians. What the records don't mention is that we were found by something else." She gestured to one of the floating displays, which shifted to show a star map of the local galactic arm. Red indicators marked dozens of systems, creating a pattern that made Sarah's blood run cold. Every major human colony, every established trade route, every strategic resource point was surrounded by Zephyrian territories. "The Hegemony has been planning humanity's extinction for over 2 centuries, Elena continued. "We were never meant to discover their burial worlds by accident, Captain. You were led there, guided by carefully placed gravitational anomalies and false sensor readings. They wanted an excuse to demonstrate their power, to show the galaxy what happens to species that defy them." Sarah stared at the star map, pieces of a horrific puzzle falling into place. "The energy signatures we detected, they were artificial, completely fabricated," Marcus confirmed. "The Zephyrians have been manipulating human exploration patterns for decades, steering our ships into predetermined encounter zones. Your crew wasn't just unlucky, you were selected for sacrifice." "But why?" Sarah demanded. What could they possibly gain from such elaborate deception? Elena's expression hardened. "Fear, Captain. The Zephyrians rule through terror, but their empire spans thousands of species across dozens of sectors. They need regular demonstrations of their power to keep rebellious thoughts at bay. Public executions of entire populations serve that purpose admirably." Another display materialized, showing recorded footage of previous Zephyrian justice actions. Sarah watched in horror as whole worlds were systematically cleansed of life, their populations dying slowly while the galaxy looked on in helpless terror. Children screaming for parents who could never answer, cities burning under weapons that turned matter itself against its users. The execution of your crew was meant to be broadcast across the galaxy, Marcus explained. A reminder that no one, no matter how innocent, is safe from hegemony justice if they violate their sacred laws. Sarah felt sick. How many others? How many human ships have they sacrificed this way? 17 confirmed incidents over the past century, Elena replied. Each one carefully orchestrated. Each crew led to their deaths by false intelligence and manipulated sensor data. The Colonial Authority believes these were random encounters with an overly aggressive but ultimately manageable threat. They have no idea they're dealing with a coordinated extermination campaign. The implications were staggering. Earth and its colonies thought they were dealing with isolated incidents of alien hostility, not a systematic campaign of genocide being carried out with surgical precision. Every human death had been planned, calculated, orchestrated for maximum psychological impact. You said something found you during the First Contact War, Sarah said, struggling to process the magnitude of what she was learning. What did you mean? Elena and Marcus exchanged glances, and Sarah sensed she was about to learn something that would change her understanding of reality itself. Tell me, Captain, Elena said carefully. What do you know about the void between? Sarah frowned. The void between? I've never heard that term. It's not surprising. The knowledge was classified at the highest levels, then buried completely when the old Earth government fell. The void between is the space that exists outside normal dimensions, a realm where the fundamental forces of physics operate differently. When the Nemesis was damaged during our first encounter with the hegemony, we were pulled into that space. Marcus activated another display, this one showing what appeared to be a star chart, but the stars were all wrong. They moved in patterns that hurt to look at, connected by threads of light that pulsed with alien purpose. We expected to die, Elena continued. Instead, we found them waiting for us. The architects, being so ancient they were old when the first stars formed. They showed us the truth about our galaxy, about the cycles of extinction and renewal that have repeated for millions of years. The Zephyrian hegemony is just the latest in a long line of extermination forces, Marcus explained. Every 100,000 years or so, a species rises to galactic prominence and begins systematically cleansing the galaxy of potential competitors. The architects have watched this pattern repeat dozens of times. Sarah's mind reeled. And they just watch? They don't intervene. They did intervene, Elena said quietly. Once, 1,000,000 years ago, they tried to break the cycle by force. The result was a war that nearly tore reality apart. Entire star systems were deleted from existence. Whole dimensions collapsed. They swore never to directly interfere again. But, Marcus added with a grim smile, they never said anything about giving other species the tools to fight back. The pieces clicked into place, and Sarah understood. They gave you the technology to modify your ship. More than that, Elena replied. They gave us knowledge. Understanding of forces that exist beyond the normal spectrum of physics. Weapons that can unmake matter at the quantum level. Defensive systems that operate partially outside normal spacetime. We became something more than human, but we retained our humanity. Sarah looked around at the impossible architecture of the Nemesis, finally, understanding what she was seeing. This wasn't just a ship anymore. It was a fusion of human engineering and architect science, a weapon designed specifically to hunt down galaxy-spanning extermination forces. For 300 years, we've been fighting a shadow war, Marcus continued. Striking at key hegemony facilities, disrupting their communications networks, eliminating their most dangerous weapons. We've prevented 17 major campaigns against developing species, saved billions of lives that the galaxy will never know were in danger. But the Zephyrians are just one threat, Elena added. The architects' records show evidence of other exterminator species preparing for their turn at galactic dominance. After the hegemony falls, there will be another, and another, stretching into infinity unless the cycle is permanently broken. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the scope of what she was hearing. How can you possibly win against forces that vast? Elena's smile was sharp as a blade. By teaching the galaxy to fight back, Captain. By showing every oppressed species that their tormentors can bleed. By proving that the strong can be brought low by those with the will to stand against them. What happened today wasn't just a rescue operation, Marcus explained. It was a message. A demonstration that the Zephyrians aren't invincible. Word of what occurred here will spread, Captain. Every species under hegemony rule will learn that a single human ship destroyed an entire battle fleet. But at what cost? Sarah asked. How many of you are left? How long can you keep fighting this war? Elena's expression grew somber. We number less than 200 now. The crew of the Nemesis has been fighting for so long that we've become something between human and legend. Some of our people have been fighting this war since before your great-grandparents were born. The architect modifications allow us to exist partially outside normal time, Marcus added. We age slowly, heal quickly, and can survive in environments that would kill baseline humans. But we're not immortal. Every battle costs us, and eventually, we will fall. Sarah felt a chill run through her. What happens then? When you're gone, who will stand against the exterminators? That, Elena said, is where you come in, Captain. Your mission doesn't end with your rescue. We're taking you home, but not so you can return to your normal life. We're taking you home so you can warn them, so you can prepare them for what's coming. Another display activated, showing detailed intelligence on Zephyrian fleet movements throughout human space. The scope of their preparation was terrifying. Massive armadas gathering at the edges of colonial authority territory, supply lines being established, forward bases being constructed. The hegemony is preparing for their final campaign against humanity, Marcus explained. Based on our intelligence, they plan to begin their assault within the next 6 months. Every human world, every colony, every space station will be targeted for complete sterilization. Sarah stared at the tactical projections, her mind struggling to process the scale of the coming slaughter. How many ships are we looking at? Approximately 50,000 combat vessels, Elena replied. Enough firepower to crack planets and burn atmospheres. The Colonial Authority has maybe 3,000 ships total, and most of those are exploration vessels like yours with minimal combat capability. It's not hopeless, Marcus added quickly. The architects gave us more than just ship modifications, Captain. They gave us knowledge. Weapons designs, defensive technologies, tactical doctrines specifically designed to counter exterminator tactics. But humanity needs time to prepare, and they need to understand what they're really facing. Elena stepped closer to Sarah, her eyes burning with intensity. We're going to give you everything, Captain. Every piece of intelligence we've gathered, every technological advancement we've developed, every tactical lesson we've learned in 3 centuries of warfare. You're going to take it back to Earth and convince them to fight. But will they listen? Sarah asked. I'm just one captain with an impossible story. Even if I had proof, would the Colonial Authority believe that the Zephyrians are planning genocide? They'll believe, Elena said with grim certainty, because you're not going back alone. Marcus smiled, and for the first time since Sarah's rescue, it reached his eyes. Tell me, Captain, how do you feel about making some very dramatic appearances at Colonial Authority headquarters? Before Sarah could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Elena and Marcus immediately moved to the nearest display, their expressions shifting to combat readiness as data flowed across their enhanced interfaces. What is it? Sarah asked, though she already dreaded the answer. Zephyrian reinforcements, Marcus reported. 12 dreadnoughts just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. They're moving to investigate the debris field. Elena's hands danced over controls that existed partially outside normal dimensions. Time to leave, Commander. Set course for Earth, maximum transit speed. If we're going to start a war, we might as well do it properly. As the Nemesis began to move through space in ways that defied physics, Sarah realized that her simple exploration mission had become something far more significant. She was no longer just a starship captain. She was about to become the herald of humanity's greatest war, the voice that would call her species to battle against forces that had been planning their extinction for centuries. The stars outside the viewports began to blur and stretch as the ship entered dimensions that had no name. Behind them, the Zephyrian dreadnoughts searched through empty space for clues to what had destroyed their fleet, never suspecting that their greatest enemy was already racing toward the heart of human space to deliver a warning that would shake the galaxy to Earth's orbital defense grid locked onto the Nemesis the moment it materialized in the Sol system. But their targeting computers immediately failed to acquire a stable lock. The ship existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making it impossible for conventional weapons to track. Within minutes, every military installation in the system was on high alert, and Admiral Patricia Harrison was receiving frantic calls from her defense coordinators. Sir, we have a massive, unknown vessel approaching Earth, reported Captain Torres from Luna Base. It's not responding to hails, and our weapons can't get a lock. The energy readings are unprecedented. Admiral Harrison stood in the command center of Earth Defense Command, studying the tactical display with growing unease. The unknown ship was larger than anything in the Colonial Authority fleet, its design unlike any known human or alien vessel. More disturbing was the way it seemed to flicker in and out of existence, as if reality couldn't decide whether it was really there. "Keep trying to establish communication," she ordered. "And give me a direct line to Colonial Command. If this is first contact with a hostile species, we need to be ready for anything." Before Captain Torres could respond, every communication system in the Sol system activated simultaneously. The voice that emerged was unmistakably human, but it carried an authority that made veteran officers stand at attention without conscious thought. "Earth Defense Command. This is Admiral Elena Vasquez aboard the Earth Defense Force vessel Nemesis. I am requesting immediate permission to dock with Earth Station 1 for emergency consultation with Colonial Authority leadership." Admiral Harrison felt her blood turn to ice. Elena Vasquez had been her predecessor, a legend who had supposedly died centuries ago during humanity's first encounter with hostile aliens. The idea that she was somehow still alive and commanding a ship that had been officially declared lost defied everything Harrison thought she knew about reality. "This is Admiral Patricia Harrison, current commander of Earth Defense Command," she replied, her voice carefully controlled. "Admiral Vasquez, according to our records, you died over 200 years ago. Please explain your situation." "Admiral, I will explain everything once we dock. However, I must inform you that we have rescued the crew of the exploration vessel Defiant from a Zephyrian execution fleet. We carry intelligence regarding an imminent threat to all human worlds that requires immediate action at the highest levels of government." Harrison's tactical display updated with new information as the Nemesis approached Earth Station 1. The ship was indeed carrying the energy signatures of Colonial Authority personnel, confirming at least part of the impossible story. Whatever was happening here, it was real enough that she had to take it seriously. "Permission granted for emergency docking," she said finally. "All security teams to maximum alert. I want every precaution taken." Within an hour, Admiral Harrison found herself in the station's main conference room, surrounded by the highest-ranking officials in human space. Colonial Authority President Rebecca Martinez sat at the head of the table, flanked by military leaders, intelligence chiefs, and scientific advisors. The mood was tense, uncertain, as everyone waited to hear an explanation for the impossible. When Admiral Elena Vasquez entered the room, followed by Captain Sarah Chun and several crew members from the Defiance, the silence was complete. Elena looked exactly as she did in historical recordings, showing no signs of the centuries that should have passed since her supposed death. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elena began without preamble, "humanity is facing extinction. The Zephyrian hegemony has been planning the systematic extermination of our species for over 200 years, and their final assault will begin within the next 4 months. President Martinez found her voice first. "Admiral Vasquez, assuming you are who you claim to be, you need to explain how you're still alive and what evidence you have to support such an extraordinary claim." Elena activated a holographic projector that materialized detailed star charts showing Zephyrian fleet movements throughout the galaxy. The scale was staggering, thousands of ships moving into position around every known human world, supply lines stretching across hundreds of star systems, forward bases being established at strategic points throughout human space. This intelligence was gathered over 3 centuries of covert operations, Elena explained. "The Nemesis has been fighting a shadow war against the Zephyrians since our supposed destruction. We've prevented 17 major campaigns against developing species and gathered comprehensive data on their operational methods." Captain Chen stepped forward, her voice still shaking from the trauma of her recent experience. "Admiral Harrison, everything Admiral Vasquez says is true. My crew and I were deliberately led into Zephyrian space through false sensor readings. They had prepared an elaborate execution ceremony designed to be broadcast across the galaxy as a demonstration of their power." Intelligence Chief David Kumar leaned forward, his expression skeptical. "Captain Chun, you're asking us to believe that the Zephyrians have the capability to manipulate our sensor networks across multiple star systems. That would require technology far beyond what we've observed in previous encounters." Elena smiled coldly. "Chief Kumar, you've never observed a true encounter with Zephyrian forces. Every engagement in your records involved obsolete ships carrying outdated equipment, specifically selected to give you a false impression of their capabilities. You've been studying their trash while they prepared to exterminate your entire species. The holographic display shifted, showing detailed technical analysis of Zephyrian weapons and defensive systems. The data revealed capabilities that far exceeded colonial authority estimates, painting a picture of a military force that could defeat humanity's defenses with contemptuous ease. Based on our analysis, Elena continued, the colonial authority fleet would last approximately 16 hours against a full Zephyrian assault. Your defensive installations might extend that to perhaps 24 hours before complete planetary bombardment begins. President Martinez stared at the projections, her face pale with shock. What do you propose we do? If what you're saying is true, we're facing impossible odds. Not impossible, Elena replied. Difficult, but not impossible. The beings who modified the Nemesis also provided us with advanced weapons and defensive technologies specifically designed to counter exterminator species. We can share this technology with the colonial authority, but it will require rapid deployment across your entire fleet. General Marcus Thompson, head of Colonial Defense Forces, studied the technical specifications with growing excitement. These weapons designs, some of these principles are completely beyond our current understanding. How long would it take to retrofit our existing ships? With traditional manufacturing methods, approximately 3 years, Elena replied. However, we've brought something that will change that timeline considerably. Commander Webb entered the conference room carrying what appeared to be a small crystalline device that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. The object hurt to look at directly, its structure shifting and flowing like liquid geometry. This is an architect fabrication matrix, Elena explained. It can manufacture any device for which it has complete technical specifications, using matter conversion at the quantum level. With this device, we can retrofit your entire fleet in a matter of weeks rather than years. The implications were staggering. President Martinez looked around the table, seeing her own shock reflected in the faces of her advisors. Admiral Vasquez, you're asking us to completely restructure human civilization based on the word of people who officially died centuries ago. Madam President, Captain Chen interjected, I've seen what the Zephyrians are capable of. I've watched them systematically dismantle a starship with surgical precision, planning to torture my crew to death for the entertainment of the galaxy. Everything Admiral Vasquez has told you is completely consistent with what I observed during our encounter. Elena activated another display, this one showing intercepted Zephyrian communications. The universal translator struggled with the alien syntax, but the meaning was clear enough. Detailed discussions of human extermination methods, debates over whether to preserve samples for study, casual references to the final cleansing of human space. The evidence is overwhelming, Elena said. The question is not whether the Zephyrians are planning to destroy humanity. The question is whether humanity will fight back or simply accept extinction. General Thompson stood abruptly, his decision made. What do we need to do? How do we begin preparations? Elena smiled, and, for the first time since entering the room, it looked genuinely pleased. We start by demonstrating to the galaxy that humans are not helpless victims. We're going to make the Zephyrians pay for every innocent life they've taken, and we're going to do it in the most public way possible. Admiral Harrison frowned. What kind of demonstration are you proposing? The Zephyrians have a major fleet base in the Proxima Centauri system, Elena explained. 47 capital ships, orbital defense platforms, and a command center that coordinates operations across this entire sector. We're going to destroy all of it. The silence that followed was deafening. President Martinez slowly shook her head. Admiral, you're talking about a direct assault on a heavily fortified enemy position. Even with your advanced technology, the risks are enormous. The risks of inaction are greater, Elena replied. Madam President, the Zephyrians rule through fear. They convince other species that resistance is hopeless, that death is preferable to the suffering that comes from defying them. We're going to shatter that myth. Commander Webb activated the holographic display, showing detailed intelligence on the Proxima Centauri base. The fortifications were impressive, multiple layers of defensive shields, automated weapons platforms, and enough firepower to defend against conventional fleets numbering in the thousands. The assault will be carried out jointly, Elena continued. The Nemesis will handle the primary defenses while newly equipped colonial authority vessels eliminate secondary targets. It will be humanity's first major victory against an exterminator species, and the news will spread across the galaxy like wildfire. General Thompson studied the tactical projections with professional interest. What kind of timeline are we looking at for fleet modifications? 2 weeks, Elena replied. The fabrication matrix can upgrade 12 ships per day once we establish proper manufacturing protocols. We'll start with your fastest vessels, destroyers, and cruisers that can be quickly modified for the new weapon systems. President Martinez remained silent for several minutes, weighing options that could determine the fate of human civilization. Finally, she looked directly at Elena. Admiral, if we do this, there's no going back. We'll be committing humanity to a war we might not be able to win. Madam President, Elena replied, humanity is already committed to that war. The Zephyrians made that decision for us centuries ago. The only question is whether we'll fight back or simply wait for them to exterminate us at their convenience. The next 2 weeks passed in a frenzy of activity unlike anything in human history. The Architect fabrication matrix worked around the clock, transforming colonial authority vessels into weapons that could wound gods. Destroyer-class ships received quantum disruption cannons that could unmake matter at the molecular level. Cruisers were fitted with dimensional shielding that operated partially outside normal space-time. The entire human fleet was being reborn as something capable of challenging forces that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Captain Sarah Chun found herself at the center of the transformation, working with Admiral Vasquez to train colonial authority crews in the use of impossible technologies. The Defiance had been the first ship to receive a complete upgrade, her hull now gleaming with exotic materials that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. It's remarkable, Captain Chun observed as she watched the fabrication matrix upgrade another vessel. In 2 weeks, we've advanced our technology by centuries. How long did it take the Nemesis to achieve similar capabilities? The initial modifications took 6 months, Elena replied. But we had the advantage of architect guidance. Your people are learning to use these systems purely from technical specifications. It's actually quite impressive. The day of the assault arrived with all the ceremony of a funeral. 50 ships of the newly upgraded Colonial Authority fleet assembled in formation around the Nemesis, their crews knowing they were about to participate in an action that would echo through galactic history. Some would return as heroes. Others would die in the cold darkness between stars, their sacrifice buying time for the rest of humanity to prepare for the coming war. Admiral Harrison stood on the bridge of the flagship Retribution, studying the tactical display as the human fleet prepared to enter hyperspace. The Proxima Centauri system lay ahead, defended by forces that had never known defeat. In a few hours, that would change forever. All ships report ready, Captain Torres announced. Fleet is prepared for hyperspace transit. Elena's voice came over the communication channel, addressing the entire fleet. Today, we send a message to every species in this galaxy. We tell them that humanity will not go quietly into extinction. We show them that even the mighty can fall when challenged by those with the will to fight. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every world that has suffered under Zephyrian tyranny. The human fleet entered hyperspace as one, racing toward a confrontation that would determine whether humanity survived to see another century. Behind them, Earth's orbital fabrication facilities continued their work, building the weapons and ships that would be needed for the greater war to come. In the Proxima Centauri system, Zephyrian sensors detected the approaching fleet and sounded alerts throughout their base. For the first time in their species' history, the exterminators were about to learn what it felt like to be hunted. The assault lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the most powerful Zephyrian base in human space had been reduced to debris and radiation. 47 capital ships that had terrorized entire sectors were scattered atoms drifting through empty space. Defense platforms that had never been breached lay broken and dark. Most importantly, the battle had been broadcast across the galaxy through hijacked Zephyrian communication networks. Every oppressed species, every enslaved world, every terrified colony watched in amazement as the humans proved that their tormentors could bleed. The news spread through hyperspace faster than light itself. In the outer rim, slave species began to whisper of rebellion. In the core worlds, Zephyrian officials felt their first taste of genuine fear. The cycle of extinction that had repeated for millions of years had finally found its match. Humanity's war of galactic retribution had begun.